listening to VOK, Voice of Korea, News Now.
The respected comrade Kim Jong-un visited the destroyer Cheon and acquainted himself with the cause of the integrated operation test of its weapon system and the training and life of its sailors. Kim Jong-un, General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea and President of the State Affairs of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, visited the destroyer Cheon on August 18th and acquainted himself with the cost of the integrated operation test of the weapon system of the destroyer and the training and life of the sailors of the destroyer. Senior Vice Admiral Park Kwang-suk, commander of the Navy of the Korean People's Army, greeted Kim Jong-un on the spot. Kim Jong-un met the sailors of the destroyer Cheon and acquainted himself with their training and living in detail. And he set the goal of military and technical qualifications to be attained by the sailors for the operation of the new type destroyer, and expressed his view on the training mode for its realization. After receiving a report on the cost of the sectional tests of various weapon systems of the warship and the composition of the integrated operation system, he expressed satisfaction over the fact that the major tasks for making the Navy high-tech and nuclear-armed are progressing on a stage-by-stage basis as planned. He underlined the need to complete the tasks slated for August and September and move on to the next stage, the process of assessing the performance and capability for conducting operations of the ship in October as planned. That day, he received the report on the further Cheon-class new type multi-mission destroyer being built at the Nampo shipyard and its long-term plan. And he had an important conversation with technicians and experts in the field of the shipbuilding industry. He said it is the most important state affairs from the viewpoint of the development of the armed forces of the TPRK and in view of the military theory based on the geopolitical peculiarities of the TPRK to extremely rapidly develop the capability for operations of our Navy, which is performing its duty in the major space of national defense. He said that, as he had stressed before, the security environment around the TPRK is getting more serious day by day, and the prevailing situation requires us to make a radical and swift change in the existing military theory and practice, and rapid expansion of nuclearization. Labeling the U.S.-ROC joint military exercises being staged again from now as a clear expression of stand of openly revealing their intention to remain most hostile and confrontational to the TPRK, Kim Jong-un said that the U.S.-ROC intensified military nexus and muscle flexing are the most obvious manifestation of their will to ignite a war and the source of destroying the peace and security environment in the region. He said the U.S.-ROC military exercises, which had become habitual practice from long ago, have always been provocative and dangerous in their nature, but the gravity is increasing from the characteristics that they are recently threatening military nexus with a nuclear element involved. And such changing situation requires us to take counteraction with proactive and overwhelming changes, he stressed. He said the TPRK will continue to bring about important and eventful changes in the position and activities of its Navy, defending the core of the national sovereignty with unstoppable struggle and strenuous efforts, and that the Navy will become a reliable force, formally performing a part in the composition of the state nuclear forces and the realm of nuclear use in the near future. It means that the combat strength of the TPRK Navy is growing more adaptable to the fulfillment of the national defense strategy and the use of war deterrent, he argued. The most reliable and steadfast way and guarantee for controlling and keeping the security environment of the region and firmly defending the sovereignty and security of the TPRK are only to make the enemies afraid of the TPRK, he said, adding that such view of the TPRK on controlling the situation and the national defense strategy will remain unchanged. He affirmed that important measures for the accelerated growth of the national defense capabilities will surely be taken continuously, and the firm will and capabilities of the DPRK to defend the sovereignty and security of the country will be expressed through practical actions.
The 37th plenary meeting of the 14th Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was held at the Monthly Assembly Hall on the 19th. Cha Ryong-hae, member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea and first Vice President of the State Defense Commission and Chairman of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK, presided over the meeting. Present there were Vice Chairman Kang Myung-seok and Kim Ho-chul, Secretary General Ko Hyul-sung, and other members of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly. Also on hand as observers were officials of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly, the Secretariat of the Cabinet, and relevant organs. The meeting brought up as agenda items the issues on calling the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK and on examining and adopting the DPRK law on protection of marine ecological environment, law on deposit credit, law on technical trade, and law on preferential treatment of families with many children. The meeting first adopted with unanimous approval the decision of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly on calling the 13th session of the 14th Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK. Then there was a report on the main content of the draft laws concerned, examined at the Legislation Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly. On the basis of the starting discussion of the draft laws presented, the meeting adopted with unanimous approval the decree of the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly on adopting the DPRK law on protection of marine ecological environment, on adopting the DPRK law on deposit credit, on adopting the DPRK law on technical trade, and on adopting the DPRK law on preferential treatment of families with many children. The Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea made public decision number 332 on the convocation of a session of the Supreme People's Assembly on the 19th. According to the decision, the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK shall convene the 13th session of the 14th Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK in Pyongyang on September 20th, 2025. The Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea made public an official notice on the convocation of a session of the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK on the 19th. According to the notice, the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly of the DPRK shall inform its deputies of the convocation of the 13th session of the 14th Supreme People's Assembly in Pyongyang on September 20th, 2025. The 13th session of the 14th Supreme People's Assembly shall discuss the issues on the examination and adoption of the DPRK law on grain management and law on intellectual property rights, and on the inspection and supervision of the execution of the law on urban management, and the registration of deputies shall be made on September 19th, 2025, is noted. Kim Yo-jong, Vice Department Director of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, at the consultative meeting with major Director Generals of the Foreign Ministry of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea on August 19th, sharply criticized the essence of the deceptive appeasement offensive of the ROK government and its stubborn character, and conveyed a foreign policy plan of the head of state. Kim Yo-jong analyzed the behavior of Seoul, which is claiming that the ROK's policy towards the DPRK is making a rapid U-turn, while saying that it respects the social system of the DPRK and will not seek any form of unification or absorption, and has no intention of committing all hostile acts. She said that now the President of the Republic of Korea, whenever an opportunity presents itself, is talking about pebble, trust, and patience like a Bulgarian poet, saying that local trust would be restored if little practices are piled up like pebbles. And Jong Dong-young, a minister serving the ROK authorities, put forth so-called 5-point core tasks in a report on major work plan at the Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee of the National Assembly. saying that it is like an endemic in Seoul, where every regime and everyone have a dream and interpret it of their own accord and express hope and idea as they please. She disclosed the strange nature of those in the Republic of Korea and their sinister intention. She said, commenting on the idea, every word and phrase of it is a fancy and a pipe dream. It's like listening to a resolution speech. As the old saying goes that it takes two to wrestle, how can he put such a resolution into practice by himself alone? The people in the Republic of Korea seem satisfied only to hear a government official's resolution full of such unrealizable dreams. Certainly, we can see at once the serious efforts to create a good impression that something is changing for the improvement of the DPRK work relations after Lee Jae-myung took power. The real intention is to show continuously that they are making steady efforts for peace. And no matter how desperately the stinky confrontational nature is shrouded in a wrapper of peace, the ore in the sack can never be hidden. We have witnessed and experienced the dirty political system of the Republic of Korea for decades, as well as the process of regime change from Moon Jae-in to Yoon Suk-yeol, and now we are sick and tired of it. To state the conclusion, the ambition for confrontation with the DPRK has been invariably pursued by the Republic of Korea, whether it held a signboard of conservatism or wore a mask of democracy. Lee Jae-myung is not the sort of man who will change the course of history. We clearly remember that Jo Hyun and An Gyu-baek, the chiefs of diplomacy and defense, which formed the basis of the Lee Jae-myung regime, openly said at a time when they were designated as candidates that they regard the North Korean regime and the North Korean army as their enemies. At this moment, the Lee Jae-myung regime is repeating the predecessor's gibberish of defensive drill, even after staging a reckless U.S. rock war drill for aggression directly threatening the security of the DPRK. This is the part clearly illuminating the double character of the Seoul authorities who are carrying two faces under the foot. As I emphasized a few days ago, there is a clear purpose for the rulers of the Republic of Korea in producing amicable image. They also know that the DPRK work relations desired by them will never come back. If they don't know, they will be idiots. They continue to tediously talk about peace and improved relations, being well aware that it is impossible to realize them because they have an ulterior motive to finally shift the responsibility for the DPRK work relations failing to recover onto the DPRK. We should not forget the fact that anyone in the Republic of Korea is the top-class faithful dog of the United States. In particular, we should pay attention to the fact that through the current joint military drill, which is being staged again while making a sign of reconciliation, the Republic of Korea is examining a new combined operation plan, or Plan 5022, for removing the nuclear and missile capabilities of the DPRK at an early stage and expanding the attack into its territory. Clarifying once again on this occasion, the Republic of Korea cannot be a diplomatic partner of the DPRK. The Republic of Korea, which is not serious, rich, and honest, will not have even a subordinate work in the regional diplomatic arena centered on the DPRK. The Foreign Ministry of the DPRK should seek a proper countermeasure as regards the relations with the most hostile states and the states listening to its instigation based on the conclusion of our head of states who pointed out the efforts of the Republic of Korea. At the consultative meeting, Kim Il-sung conveyed the respected comrade Kim Jong-un's foreign policy plan for taking a preemptive counteraction in a diplomatic way against the enemy states, posing a lasting danger to the sovereignty and security of the DPRK, and for controlling the rapidly changing regional and international geopolitical situation in conformity with the national interests of the DPRK, and held an in-depth discussion on the orientation of the immediate diplomatic activities. Another wonderful village has been built at the Changtae stock breeding farm in the city of Haeryong, North Hamgyong province in the northern part of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea this year too, thanks to the respected comrade Kim Jong-un's noble intention of believing in the people as in heaven. True to the idea on duty-oriented architecture and rural construction policy of the Workers' Party of Korea, Officials and builders in the city of Haryong have built dozens of dwelling houses and 2 livestock farms whose practicality and formative art have been ensured, and planted trees of good species and flower shrubs at yards and around the village, presenting a conspicuous green landscape. A meeting was held with the attendance of officials concerned, officials and builders of the city of Haryong, and agricultural workers to move into the new houses. A congratulatory address was delivered, and permits for the use of dwelling houses were conveyed, and speeches made. An art performance was given to congratulate the agricultural workers moving into new houses. Officials called on farmers to share joy with them. Choi Sun-hee, Foreign Minister of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, sent a message to Sergei Viktorovich Lavrov, Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, on the 16th, in reply to the message of greetings sent on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation. The reply message said the friendly and cooperative relations between the two countries forged in the days of the grim anti-Japanese war have been constantly strengthened and developed despite all sorts of trials and challenges, and the Korean people always remember the internationalist defeats of the service personnel of the Red Army who shed blood in their fight for Korea's liberation. The delegation of the State Duma of the Russian Federation and the Russian artists visited the DPRK and congratulated the Korean people on the 80th anniversary of national liberation, which served as an occasion that demonstrated once again the invincibility and solidity of our friendly relations between the DPRK and Russia is stressed. The message expressed the belief that the strategic communication and concerted action between the external policy organs for the economic strengthening and development of the relations of alliance between the two countries would be further expanded and strengthened in the future, all was true to the treaty between the states in conformity with the strategic plan and naval intention of the summits of the DPRK and Russia. Choi Sun-hee, Foreign Minister of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, received a message of greetings from Sergei Viktorovich Lavrov, Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, on the 15th, on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation. The message said the Russian people celebrate the glorious day together with the Korean people and express deep thanks to the Korean friends, keeping deep in their hearts the memory of soldiers of the Red Army of the Soviet Union who fought shoulder to shoulder with Korean patriots and devoted their lives to the common cause of victory. Today, the tradition of friendship and mutual cooperation provided by the foreigners gets firmer with the involvement of the Korean soldiers in the operation for liberating Kursk region occupied by Ukrainian neo-Nazis, the message said, and added that the Russian people will never forget the heroic feats of the Korean soldiers. In the message, the Russian Foreign Minister expressed the will to do his best to implement the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership concluded at the historic Russia-DPRK Pyongyang Summit meeting in June 2024. Workers of the Sangwon Cement Complex who have turned out to implement the decision of the 12th plenary meeting of the 8th Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea are expanding successes through a more dynamic struggle for increased production. The complex gives priority to science and technology and actively applies technical innovation proposals, carrying out its daily cement production plan at 109%. The Sangwon limestone mine, in charge of supplying raw materials for cement production, carries on production and business activities with science and technology as the lifeline of its development, and thus records the ore production result of 118% every day as against the same period of last year. A short course is given in Pyongyang for those who would command the equipment assembly at the construction sites of new regional industry factories. It began on July 24th and was attended by officials of the Ministry of Regional Industry in charge of equipment assembly, researchers of the Academy of Food and Consumer Goods Science and the Academy of Light Industry Science under the Ministry of Light Industry, and technicians of the equipment assembly stations in the provinces. The short course deals with the principles of production processes, characteristics of equipment, and issues to be considered in the assembly and installation of the equipment. The participants in the short course tried to understand many technical problems and have discussions to raise their practical abilities. They went to regional industry factories in Sukchon County of South Gangnam Province to consolidate what they learned during the short course. The Korean Central News Agency released a commentary on the title, U.S. ROK Joint Military Drill will only highlight the fact that enemy is enemy. The commentary said the U.S. ROK large-scale joint military drill, Ulchi Freedom Shield, officially started on August 18th and continued. The drill is bringing together the U.S. forces in the Republic of Korea and the forces of the ROK Army as the main, and the expedition of the U.S. Marine and armed forces of UN Command member states outside the region. And more than 580,000 persons from 4,000 odd institutions and organizations across the Republic of Korea are participating in the drill. The scale of the drill is very enormous, and the number of planned field mobile exercises is at the highest level. The enemies are claiming that some items of the field mobile exercises will be postponed to next month, but the basic exercises reflected in the U.S. ROK Joint Drill Plan are carried out as they are. Only 30 drills to be staged by the ROK Army alone will be carried over. The fact proves once again that the drill adjustment farce being staged by the present U.S. and ROK authorities, as if it was a measure different to the preceding drill, is nothing but a deceptive trick. In view of the facts of the past and the present, the aggressive and provocative nature of the U.S. ROK large-scale joint military drill and its negative impact on the situation in the Korean Peninsula and in the region remain unchanged. The world people should know clearly what is the source of disaster harming the security of the Korean Peninsula and the region, and why we call enemies also enemies. As long as the hostile entity against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea remains unchanged, there will be no change in the thoroughgoing and merciless will of our armed forces to counter the military provocations of the enemy states, and the trustworthy strength of the DPRK racing for lasting peace settlement on the Korean Peninsula and in the region will steadily increase. The firm will and ability of the DPRK to defend the sovereignty and security of the country against the U.S. ROK joint military drill, which is immutable in hostility, will be clearly expressed as practical actions, and it is clear that the DPRK's counteraction will be proactive and overwhelming, the commentary stressed. And that's the end of the news. This is Voice of Korea.
Ideal result of regional development policy of the Workers' Party of Korea. Tens of modern regional industry factories were built in 20 cities and counties across the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, with the completion of the first-year task of the regional development policy of the Workers' Party of Korea. Now it has become a hated country, but with modern light industry factories to be built in every city and county in 10 years to come, the regional people will surely be able to attain the level of organized in material and economic life. With that alone, however, it is impossible to fully realize the Workers' Party of Korea's regional development policy. The signs of backward and underdeveloped character of the region can be found more largely in the sphere of cultural life than in that of material life, and the most serious of the gaps between the urban communities and the rural ones is to be seen in the sectors of public health, hygienic arrangements, science, and education. The respected Comrade Kim Jong-un took part in the groundbreaking ceremony of a hospital and leisure complex in Gangnam County for the Regional Development 2010 policy in February 2025, and said it is the ideal result of the regional development policy that the whole country should be put on an even cultural level too, by building up the regions to be as wonderful as the capital city is, and transforming the environment of the regional people through cultural life. The struggle for the implementation of the party's regional development policy is a revolution to fundamentally and ultimately put an end to centuries-old backwardness and laggardness of the regional area. The ideal result of the regional development policy of the Workers' Party of Korea will surely be achieved under the right leadership of Kim Jong-un.
So far, you've been listening to an account titled Ideal Result of Regional Development Policy of the Workers' Party of Korea. This is Voice of Korea.
Dear listeners, with this we conclude the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Voice of Korea presents its English language service for Europe between 15 and 16 hours UTC, between 18 and 19 hours UTC, between 21 and 22 hours UTC, and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 13,760 kHz and 15,245 kHz. For North America, between 15 and 16 hours UTC and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 9,435 kHz and 11,710 kHz. And for Northeast Asia, between 4 and 5 hours UTC and between 6 and 7 hours UTC on 7,220 kHz, 9,445 kHz, and 9,730 kHz. Goodbye, this is Pyongyang.